Well, I can kick us off by welcoming everyone to the regular scheduled meeting of the Heartwork Guild. Um, Anybody else want to do any welcoming?
Hi,
We are recording this session as usual, and so you'll be able to locate it the on the website, right? If you want to check out what goes on during during the meeting. Um, and I think we can proceed by beginning as we usually do with land acknowledgement and grounding. And what I'm going to ask is the question, would anyone like to do those parts of the agenda?
I would. I haven't done one in a while. Yeah, I'm excited to do land acknowledgements, and I'm excited that in other groups, other people have been stepping up and starting to do land acknowledgements, which is very cool. And we start by acknowledging the land as an acknowledgement that the land was here before we were. The land will continue long after we are gone. And we start our meetings with this reminder to bring ourselves into our proper perspective of things as a reminder that we are part of a much bigger living organism and that as such, we are interdependent and interconnected. And so we start our meetings with this reminder that really our job today here is to find ways of being in right relations with all of our relations, and that the work that we do here is interconnected. And so in doing so, we also are reminded that this is indigenous wisdom that has been handed down through countless generations in numerous cultures around the globe, and that this is wisdom that is being shared with us settler types who, even though our culture has caused great harm in forgetting the interconnection and the primacy of reciprocity. So, in acknowledging that wisdom, we're also we have a debt to pay, a debt of gratitude and a debt of care, and a reminder that ultimately our job is to heal any harms that may have been caused in our relationships, and to, at the very least, avoid causing harm moving forward. And so being mindful of how we can um, be in right relationship with all of our relations. So with that, I'm going to invite us into just a really simple and quick grounding, um, just to the extent that it feels comfortable. Close your eyes and really just take a moment to feel the weight of your body on the chair where you are. Feel the gentle tug of gravity holding you to the earth and the support of the structures that are holding you where you are. And just take on your own time 3 deep breaths in, feeling the energy increasing as you have the inhale and the little relaxation that happens on the exhale. And when you're ready, come join us back in the circle. Over to you, April.
Thank you, Ben. Um, just as a really quick check-in, my question is, if you were not the human animal that you are, what animal do you think you would be, and what gift do you bring? And I think we need to establish our circle for today. I'm going to suggest it be Roland, Ben, and then April.
I would be a songbird. Obviously. Over to Ben.
What's the songbird's gift?
Song?
Yeah, it's right there in the title. Um, let's see. Well, um, I think the animal with the uh, most built-in enlightenment is a dog. And so I don't know if I should dare to aspire to be a dog, but I find the well, in our dog in particular, but just that pure connection. Um, yeah, that would be the gift I think that I would bring as a dog. That pure joy and connection. There's nothing quite like being greeted by a dog when they recognize you as part of their pack. Over to you, April.
Um, I think I would be a bear. Um, and they bring the gift of being themselves and actually being okay with other things and animals around them as long as you don't surprise them. So I'm a non-surprised bear, I think. Thank you. Time to move on to the North Star, I believe. Is that our next item to look at? Why it is that we are here, why it is that we're meeting, what we are accomplishing, those kind of questions.
Yep, and it's a choose your own adventure is the way we've done it. So you can pick from a review of the agreements, the functions or our responsibilities, or anything else that is North Star. Deal or choice.
Agreements. So over to Roland, I think, to start.
Agreements. I'm going to pick my favorite today. Both and because everything is has multiple influences uh, and I don't think that my little brain is able to capture and understand all of the permutations, and so I keep it open by looking at it as a not as a binary, but as a something that's fluid. Over to Ben.
Well, I think building on it's not an agreement that's here, but it is an agreement that we bring up a lot, which is the oral tradition. And which I think is building off of what you're saying in that well, it's also speak from your heart what's true for you for now. And that idea that our understanding is always evolving. And um, to Roland's point, I think it's not confusing to let things evolve. It's confusing when we try to figure out what the final, correct answer, the once and for always correct answer is, I think, where the confusion comes from. So letting things be open, letting my heart tell me what's true for me for now. Over to you, April.
I'm really aligning myself with we lead with curiosity, kindness, patience, compassion, and gentleness for ourselves and for everybody with whom we are in relation. And I've had that tested recently due to being stressed and not paying attention. Um, and I've had some people suggest that I've led without some of those attributes. Um, and after I finished being defensive about, of course I would do that. How can you say I'm not compassionate? Then I sort of took it on board and started to understand differently how to be that way, to sort of breathe, let down my shoulders and breathe back into that. And it was a good reminder that I'm not always as humble as I pretend to be or would aspire to be, I guess. All right. Thank you. So I think at this point we need to construct our agenda. Is that right? All right.
And I feel like there are probably two main things. One of them is the Heartwork meeting times, and there's also the building on what we did last week to complete the mapping, or at least continue the mapping exercise. I have no idea what this requires, so I will say continue because I don't know if we're at the stage of completing or not. So those are the two main items that I see. I'll pass to Ben so that we can do a round to see if there's anything else anyone would like to add.
No, and I would put my vote towards continuing the work on the Miro board and seeing how close we can get to complete. Because I think we can get pretty close, depending on how we define complete. So yeah, over to April.
That sounds good to me because I haven't yet been involved directly in the mural board. I have glanced at it a couple of times, but would really like to plunge in. The other thing I'm wondering is, can we reserve some time at the end to talk about meeting times? Great.
Shall we dive over to Miro board?
Yes.
Okay, I've got it queued up.
And I'd like to give
Oh.
tokens to the two of you for actually going ahead and doing what you've done so far on the mural board. Thank you.
And I just put the link to the board in the chat so that we can all have direct access to it.
Thank you.
And so I will do an update on where I think we are. And basically, yeah, this will be partly recap and a little bit of kind of proposal thrown in. So this is part of a longer conversation that we've been having where we started to identify lessons learned from our experiences with the Connect the Dots Club and meetings more broadly. And I would say that that first goal, I think we've largely completed. In fact, I think we should check off glean lessons learned as a task that we've accomplished. And now I think we're in the job of figuring out how does this turn into something like badges for Heartwork. And because the lessons that we've gleaned have really been, this is my gloss on it, but it mostly seems to be about good facilitation skills. It really is about what are the structures, practices, skills sets, etc., that allow us to create spaces where people can show up. And we've done some brainstorming, I think, where we pulled out a lot of those more sort of more clearly defined nuggets. And so that's, I think, where we are now. I think we actually have a pretty good basic list of some of the things that we've been identified in this longer conversation. And I think that the next step is trying to figure out how do we categorize and or share these things, because some of them are specific techniques. Some of these are like step 1, step 2, step 3, and some of these are qualities, not necessarily a technique, but maybe a perspective or an ability. So anyhow, I think that's where we are, where we have things that are feeling like they are necessary components of being able to lead successful meetings where people can be present and show up. And there's a continuum here on at least one dimension and probably a couple different dimensions.
Yeah.
So I think that's where we are in terms of the next step is how do we cluster, sort, talk about, organize these different things so that they are useful and shareable. So that's my gloss, and I'm going to hand it back to April for elaboration.
Okay. Yeah, I think that there's loads of good stuff here, and that probably the primary things that what I would identify in terms of getting the most out of what people have to contribute and keeping it equitable and safe for people are are listed here. Those are things that are important to me. And I agree with the dividing it into techniques and then into qualities and perspective. But there's also something about not so much about the how, because the how comes through practice, but the what and the why, I guess. And maybe the why is the bigger question. Uh, and then the what is, a combination of techniques and perspective. Um, and I guess one other whole question I have here is what this looks like to somebody who has no knowledge of facilitation, but might have experienced good facilitation and feels like it's magic. Anyway, that's more than one thing. Um, Now I'm passing over to Roland.
I have nothing really to add. Just looking forward to what we're going to do. Am I answering it? Did I miss a question somewhere? No. Okay.
I think the implied question was, I did a bit of a summary of where I think we are, and does that sound good? Anything to add to that?
Cool. Yeah. No, I think I have nothing to add. I do have a question. Um, is there anything, or is it can am I answering a question around good facilitation, or are there things that are outside of facilitation that if they come up, I can um, talk to?
Do you have a thought in mind in particular?
Um, no, it just occurred to me that the discussion has been funneled into facilitation, and I am curious about other things that the Heartwork may have that could fit on this map, is all. So I'm asking to know if how to gear my lenses.
I I would be really curious, since we could look back at the driver statement for Heartwork, and it would be, I think this gets poured into what are the badges. That's the frame of reference now, is we've gleaned lessons learned, which is more global. And now the next task before us is what are the badges that are necessary for Heartwork? And if there are Heartwork badges that are necessary that are beyond facilitation, then they would be appropriate. But it would still be within the frame of reference of what are the badges that are relevant to Heartwork. So not it's not anything and everything. It's not any, but it is, it may be that there are things beyond facilitation that are Heartwork badges, but seeing as how it's primarily being the keeper of the agreements and making sure the agreements, so my understanding is the agreements are what do you need to be present and show up in the work that we do together. And that just sounds like facilitation to me. But then I'm a facilitator, so I would, you know, um, but if there are other things that are necessary in terms of creating spaces where people can show up and be present, then that would still be appropriate, I think. Over to you, April.
I, I think there's a couple of things here that are really important. I'm glad, Roland, that you brought them up. And also, Ben, your explanation just now is very helpful to me. But I think facilitation needs to rest on a good platform of ethics around being socially progressive, inclusive, equitable, and all that kind of stuff, or else it becomes manipulation. And you can use any of the techniques. I mean, there's some neutrality there, and then uh, in the absence of ethics, it becomes like it could be good or it could be bad. Um, it can be socially um, uh, holding up human rights, or it can be used as a way of manipulating something else for power reasons. So I think there needs to be a bigger circle around facilitation that is the ethical circle. Um, we can't do this in the absence of ethics, I think. And there's probably other terms in sociocracy to describe what I'm calling ethical principles. Maybe they just simply are the sociocratic principles that are the big circle around this. And then these are the ways of getting at that. That's how I'm thinking about it at the minute. I'm also aware that there's two facilitators here and one person who says he's not a facilitator, although I've seen some lurking facilitation skills in Roland's work. Um, so I want to make sure that I'm not ganging up as a facilitator. I need to use my best facilitation skills to be having this conversation, I guess. Over to Roland.
Well, and just to clarify, it's not that I don't think I can facilitate, it's that I don't want to. Um, you know, I go beyond what I would like to do when I facilitate a circle or am a circle keeper. What I'm really interested in actually is what you were just talking about, April. It's the what is everything that we're doing, either the circle keeping or the marshaling earthworms. What is that couched in? What's the art of living that we're using and practicing? So yeah. So I really like what you were just saying about ethics. Ethics, values, how we live, how we walk our talk. So over to Ben.
I have to say, I think it's interesting. I feel like there are oftentimes there are these assumptions people make about terminology. And so thinking that a facilitator is some sort of extraordinary role, and when facilitation is literally just makes things easier. And so to say that you're not interested in facilitation is a way of saying, I have no interest in making this easier for other people. So it's like, um, uh, I think, and maybe that's one of the things about this toolkit is demystifying it. Um, and I'm wondering if that's also because I keep coming back to, so what's that look like? Like what does an ethics, the art of living, etc. What does that look like when we're together? And so again, I feel like that's still part of this kit. Like, what does it look like to be with each other in a way and also in a way where we don't have to predetermine what the right answer to living with art is, or the art of living. We don't have to come up with a prescription of this is what counts and what doesn't count. So we're really just creating the space where people can come together with, and again, that does become the interesting question of, what are the basic requirements of coming together? And which is the agreements. I think ultimately it keeps coming back to the agreements because we may have different ideas of what it means to be ethical with each other, and we need to talk about that. And because I don't believe anyone is going to be able to come up with the right answer about our ethics, or our right answer about ethics or what it means to live life well. So for me, this just keeps coming back to how do we have conversations about those questions
Yeah.
that are healthy and productive.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's about asking good questions, that sort of thing. Um, and I'm not sure where we are in terms of process. I feel like we're stalled getting to actually doing the work. And so I'm just wondering, yeah, what's next? April, over to you.
Well, a simple way to deal with what's next is to do the clumping and then see what comes out of that. And stuff will organize itself in a certain way, and then we can talk about what that organization looks like, I think. Um, there's also, I mean, I think there's some sequencing that needs to happen here, but maybe we should clump first, sequence second, and then see where we are. Over to Roland. Have I lost everybody?
Sorry, I thought I didn't realize I was muted.
Oh, sorry, that's
All
you.
I said was that sounds really good, and I passed it over to Ben.
Yeah, that sounds good to me too.
Good.
Um, yeah. So do we all have access to the board? Um, I will propose just as a starting point, I do like the silent sorting, which is we can maybe just set the timer, say maybe 5 minutes, and we can each be clumping things and reclumping things and work in relative silence and then check in and see how oh, basically it's an opportunity to play around with the clumping and then to talk through what was your thinking around the clumping. So that's my proposal. Any objections or elaborations?
Shall we?
Uh,
Oh, sorry. Go ahead, April.
Sounds fine with me, and I was just checking that my little arrow will drag stuff around, so I'm good.
Shall we pause the video while we're doing the silent sorting? Or do you want the animation of the screen moving be present?
We can always cut it out.
Okay.
All right. So go.
Thank you. Oops.
All right, well, that was 5 minutes. And welcome, Justin. Well, you're there. And oh, I think you're here too. So what I'm going to propose is that we do once around, now that we've been in there actually trying to figure out what some of the clusters might be, an opportunity to share our thinking about how we were going about doing the clustering, and then we can see where we go from there. So, April, do you want to start? And what were you thinking about as you were clustering things?
Okay, are we doing one thing or more than one thing?
What do you mean?
Uh, are we, can I talk about three things in one
Yeah,
turn?
yeah,
Okay,
yeah, exactly. What kinds of things were you thinking? And actually, that's a good point. Let's do 2 rounds. So we each have 1 round to share what are some of the things we were thinking about as we were clustering, and then we'll get a response round of what are we noticing, what's coming up for us.
right. Um, okay, I was clustering at different levels. Um, so on the left-hand edge of this diagram for me are the things that set us up to be able to relate well. Some of them are sociocracy, some of them are other things. Then there was another section, which is kind of in the middle, which was about the circle process itself. How many rounds? What do you do in each round? Getting diverse opinions, the tools that you use like Miro or big pieces of brown paper on the wall with Post-its on it or whatever to actually work through the circle process. And then I was left with questions. One of the big questions being, are we looking at facilitation as only circle process? Because there's a number of ways of getting the blind people and the elephants to gather perspectives that aren't circle process. That's one of the ways of creating deeper dialogue, but there are other ways as well. Are we only going to talk about our relationship to circle process, or is there a larger landscape of facilitation that we can consider here? And the other piece is making sure the sociocracy stuff is in there, which I think is on the top left-hand edge as well. So actually the stuff in the top left-hand edge and down the left side can be got at by a number of different techniques, not just circle process. And so they would be in any of the work I do, those things are there. In some of the work I do, I follow circle process of the sociocratic kind. Over to Roland.
Well, the whole grouping exercise is just really an interesting thing. It's an opportunity to practice. I found myself finding a term that I started to move things around, and then suddenly the thing that I was thinking as being sort of the connecting link between all of these different things would get moved to a completely different part of the board, so that I had this grouping that I had started, and then the what it was grouping around got moved. So just sort of like letting go and letting the circle do the thing. If there's another facilitation practice other than circle, I can't really speak to that. But what I was seeing as being sort of nodes or agreements, techniques, and there was a third one, and I can't see it right now. Yeah. And I thought it was interesting also thinking about it, the relationship between the agreements and techniques and knacks, and things kind of forming between those two nodes. So who am I passing to now?
Justin.
Justin. Over to Justin.
Hello, all. I apologize for being late. We were on a hike and lost track of time, so I am just listening and observing to understand at the moment. And I'll pass to Ben. Well, we will pass to Ben.
Cool. Yeah, I had the same experience where I was forming a cluster and then all of the things in my cluster went whoosh. And but I think I was doing the same. I had the same basic idea where I was thinking from left to right, from at more abstract to more concrete. So I was putting things that were sort of technique-y on the right-hand side, and um, and I was putting things that were more concepts, abstractions, concepts, high values kind of things on the left-hand side. And then I was realizing that there are some sort of intermediates. Like there was something in about the circle process. It's something about giving everyone a chance to speak engenders respect and creates an environment where people feel welcome, something like that. And I was thinking that's kind of in the middle, right? Like it's the April earlier when you were talking about the why, I was thinking also we were kind of differentiating the what from the why from the how. And I was actually thinking when is also a really good one.
Mhm.
When do you use a technique? When is it appropriate? So I was sort of thinking, and that's kind of, I guess, the knack part of it that so I was thinking the right-hand side is things where you could say, here's step one, here's step two, here's step three. And on the left-hand side where it was really kind of just saying why or what, the big questions, the values and the thinking behind it. And in the middle then is some stuff about differentiating when one versus another.
Yeah.
And I think that to your comment about what's the scope of the techniques that we're talking through, I guess really it's sort of in a sociocracy perspective, what are the things that actually are likely to be useful um, most of the time, more often. I mean, that's getting me to think about what's in the basic kit. And I think
Yeah.
one of the things about circle process that's nice is it's some basic stuff.
Yeah.
And then once you get that kind of the basics of the structure of a good, and I think that's ultimately what the circle is, there's an opening, there's the opening about why are we here? Why are we bothering to come together? That alignment. Then there's making sure that we're all clear on the how and like what we're going to do. Then there's the business at hand and the particulars about making space for ideas and clarity about decisions and people's input. And then there's a wrap up closing. So there's a nice kind of package
Yeah.
at a fairly high level. And then you can start to get pretty nuanced about, well, what are different ways that you can set that up, anyhow, that's how I was thinking about things. So we've all had a chance to share what we were thinking about when we were doing our sorting. Now a response round. Now we've all had a chance to share. what's occurring to you, what's up for you, what are you noticing, what has your attention? April, over to you.
Well, we could start putting things into kind of like boxes that has a flow, I guess, is the way I'm seeing it now. This could become a flow chart, starting with exactly what you said, Ben, the big stuff and the stuff that we're trying to get at, and then the uh, a bit about the process and about uh, the why, I guess, and then the um, into so here's what we're going to do sort of thing, and then closing, and then maybe a box for other stuff. That's the way I would structure a flow chart of this, I guess. And it's making me think, although I don't want to be mechanistic, and I haven't even really looked at what I'm going to mention now yet, but there's a whole bunch of competency related things for any facilitators, whether or not you're following Sociocratic principles, that's available that you can have a look at and say, yeah, I've got those. No, I don't have those. I don't know what those are. I don't want to do those, whatever. But I would like, I have access to that through the International Association of Facilitators, and I'd like to look at what they show for competencies that are kind of over the life of a facilitator. So as you gain experience and knowledge, you'll shift in what you use and why you use it, I think. So we'll be able, I just want to take a look at that again so that I can make sure that that I've thought through the way that they showed that. Now they just show it like a typology, right? Which we don't want to be doing because that's way too organizational chartish and lockstep. And we know that lockstep and organization charts is not the way that work gets done. And it's not the way that people do their best, but it's just as a reference. I want to have a look at that. What was the question?
It's a response round, so you're just what did you hear in other people's shares?
Right. Okay, and so far I've only talked about what I saw in my own share. I what I heard is that there is an implicit pattern here, and that we can put together a common picture of what that is, I guess. And that there's probably some more exploration to be done about particular things so that people can understand how that fits and decide what they want to use, I guess. That's what I've heard. Over to Roland.
I heard that it would be a good idea to, I think I don't know. I'm not sure what I've heard, so I am going to pass. And yeah, pass to Justin.
I have nothing to add right now, and pass to Angela.
Pass to
Ben.
Ben. We pass to Ben.
Well, one of the things that came up while April was talking was I added a post-it for appreciative inquiry.
Yeah.
And I was thinking a bigger gloss. What is the healthy balance between ensuring some level of competence and not making this a credentialing kind of thing. You know, how do we make sure that we're focused on the good enough for now, safe enough to try aspect of it, and not making this seem like you're getting a professional degree in something? Because this really is like, how can we do? And the meeting that I was at this morning about the network of networks, one of the things that really came clear to me is this, how disempowering it is when we make things seem bigger than they need to be.
Yeah.
You know, and I think that's the whole thing around facilitation is, you know, this does not need to be anything that there are human qualities of curiosity, you know, basically patience, curiosity, kindness, gentleness, you know, the one of our opening agreements. And then there are things that you can, you know, you can start to practice. And maybe, I guess that's what I'm stumbling towards, is when I think of the badging system, or when I think of, I've been imagining this as a tool library. And just like a physical tool library, you probably have some sort of requirements about who's allowed to take out what tools. And it probably involves a little bit of a safety training. Or at least for me, that would seem like a responsible thing to do, to say, do you know enough about this tool so you're not going to be a danger to yourself and others? And do you know something about when and when not to use this tool? So there's the tool itself, and then there is getting people figuring out, and maybe it's risk assessment, you know, sort of understanding where are the risks when you're using them, without getting people all panicky about, you know, like if you don't get it absolutely right, then you're causing some sort of bodily harm. Anyhow, I think that came out really rambly, and but it's kind of what's on my mind. So we've had 2 rounds of sharing, and I'm wondering now, what do we think is the next step for the sorting? And we had a couple different ideas that came early. So April was talking about sort of boxes for the flow chart. Can we identify, and actually, and Roland was talking about, I think I'm going to propose that we build on the way Roland was doing it, where there was something that we started to cluster things around. And let's either identify some of the Post-its that are on the board, or create new ones that we think should be the center of some clusters. And then I'm going to propose we change the color of those, and then we sort again, where once we identify what some of those focus points are, then we see if we start to cluster things in a similar way. So that's my proposal. I'm going to send it around for concerns or elaborations or objections. Over to you, April.
I love your proposal. And I think we should just go ahead and do that. Over to Roland.
Yeah, I like your proposal also. And I would also like to propose. No, I think I'm gonna. I like your proposal. Let's do it. Over to Justin.
Ange had mentioned earlier that she thought it would be a good idea to color code, and I was saying I don't feel comfortable speaking at the moment because we're late to the party, so I didn't want to disrupt any flow. So I was still observing, but I had to correct my mistake because it was a good idea. Pass to Angela.
I love it. Let's do it. Thank you, Justin. I pass to Ben.
Cool. Well, let's start, let's just do this popcorn for now. Are there any post-its already on the board that anyone thinks should be the center of a cluster? And if so, I can just color code that. I can change the color. So does anyone have any of the things that are up there?
Agreements.
Agreements. All right. Roland, can you see those differences in color?
It's darker. Yeah.
Okay.
I have a suggestion for something that's not on the board, not as its own thing, which is simply circle process. Because everything so far that looks at circle process is a piece of it, but we don't have the actual thing to cluster around. Thank you.
I'm going to do, I think, in that spirit, techniques. And then I want to add um, oh, what do I call it? We sort of talked about earlier. I'm going to say desired outputs. Does that make sense? Or outcomes. It seems to me like there are some things that are about what we want to do, and then there's some things that are about what we're hoping to accomplish as a result of it.
Yeah.
So
are we popcorning still?
Yeah.
I think we should turn the big stuff, the big Y, into a green one of those.
Cool.
Thank you.
And I don't know if there's anything, I can't see it right now. I would like to add sort of decentralized or shared responsibility. And maybe I'll explain what I mean, because the circle process for me is that we're all circle keepers. What I don't like about being the quote unquote facilitator is feeling like I'm the teacher at the head of the room. And I often forget that the circle process is everybody is responsible for the circle. Different people have different tools, but everybody's responsible. And how to, and I think the trick is how to develop that culture for me anyway. And it's that was the way that I thought would be the shortest way of describing all of that.
As a friendly amendment, can I turn that into a culture of shared responsibility?
Yeah, that sounds great.
Cool.
So that's my popcorn with a
Okay.
little butter and salt.
And pepper. Oh. All righty. Is this good enough for a start?
I have something to add, which is just from one of the things that you said as we were going around considerations, I think, which is to remember that good enough for now, safe enough to try. And it reminded me what sort of the overall framework for this was, and to not get in a twist or worried about this, but to test it by that saying. And the other piece was the safety training piece, which I guess could be called risk assessment too. And that takes care, we're making sure it's safe. We have a way of doing that for this as much as for any other guild work, right? In any guild. That's important. That keeps us all safe. Thank you.
Yeah, and I think that's a good reminder too, that the inspiration for all of this was how do we cross-pollinate, and how is Heartwork supporting the other guilds. And so we're really taking the lead in thinking about how do we do risk assessment, and make safe enough spaces
Yeah.
so that other guilds can benefit from our experience on that. So that's really cool. I am wondering, we've been popcorning, and I'm wondering if we want to do another sorting now that we have some focus points. And I want to, speaking of shared responsibility, I want to empower anybody as we're doing the sorting. If it feels like there's another focus area that we're missing, that anyone can create one of the green Post-its with a new focus area, and we can go from there. And Justin and Angie, I know you came in late, but jump in whenever you feel ready, and there's no penalty for for late arrival.
And there's no mistakes. We
Right.
just change
You
stuff.
can't get this right, and you can't get this wrong.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right.
I
So
think-
once around, are we ready to do a second round of sorting? And does that make sense? April, over to you.
Yes, it does. Again, let's do it. Over to rollout.
Thumbs up. Over to Justin.
Yeah, I think where my mind was going was what April was talking about last, and just from me being like kind of steeped in polyvagal theory, which is around safety, and what of these sticky notes would bring about a state of safety or socialness or playfulness. That's all I was thinking for now. I'll pass to Angela.
Yeah, I'm good. Pass to Ben.
Cool. I'm just going to hit the timer again, and another 5 minutes, and see what we get this time.
Oops.
I've lost the Post-its. Where did the Post-its go?
Oops.
I want to add one that is, I'm gonna, for now, just call it NACS. But it strikes me that there's a bunch of things on here that are sort of general knowledge kind of thing.
Is that knacks or snacks? Snacks are always good in any facilitation.
We should have, I'll make snacks too.
There is something though about food as part of it,
Mm,
or some sort of what generally gives humans comfort to share.
Ben, you said that knacks are Sorry, Ben, you said knacks are general knowledge?
Yeah, I was trying to come up with a word that's something not like a step 1, step 2, step 3, but kind of having a feel for something. That's what I was trying to accomplish with NACS. Well, and that's 5 minutes. I'm still seeing some movement, so can take a little more time.
That's me because I'm just sneaking it in at the last minute. It just seems to me that this goes in more than one place.
Mhm.
So I'm putting it in circle process, but also in other processes. Thank you.
So I'm going to propose, let's do the same thing. And actually we're getting close to the end of time, and we wanted to have some time reserved for the talking about meeting times. So as a place, as a kind of parking lot, is that the right word? A way of kind of putting a little bit of a bow on where we are right now. We're not going to get much further than this today, but let's do this second round of clustering. Same question. What were you noticing about how you were putting things together? And we'll do, yeah, let's just do 2 quick rounds on, so what are your thoughts on clustering? April, over to you.
Well, as some of you know, I'm kind of the queen of cluster. I love clustering things, and I love seeing themes emerge or possible themes emerge. So then you can talk about that. And often the whole other set of things emerges from each of those themes, has a life of its own. So I'm loving what we're doing. And I did notice that it was much faster for me this time to put stuff under those particular headings. So I think that somehow we've kind of got the right headings emerging with that. Over to Roland.
I think these are always the fact that it's challenging to do these is an interesting because it underlines the relationship between things. And is this more towards agreements, or is this more towards technique, or is this more towards, and what's the difference between, what is the big stuff and what's the big why, and what's this culture of shared responsibility and techniques, and what's the relationship between the two? So Yeah, I think I was less struck by the actual clusters and more interested in why it was challenging to put them with one cluster versus another. And over to Justin.
I'll pass to Angela.
This is just like things that we're noticing, correct?
Yep.
For me, maybe it's because I'm new, but I think the green ones are perhaps a little vague for me. So I'm having trouble placing the yellow ones with the green ones. I pass to Ben.
Yeah, I think for me, it was similar to what Roland was saying. And it may be because you're new, and it's also, I think, kind of how clustering works is that it feels vague until it starts to, it's almost like walking through a misty forest, it kind of, everything seems foggy, and then eventually the mist starts to clear. I feel like the mist feels like it's clearing to me. And I feel like there's some nesting. Like, I think circle, part of the challenge is circle process is probably just a technique, or maybe a subset of techniques under other things. And I think, the line between the big why and the desired outcomes is also sketchy. I mean, it's sort of, obviously the desired outcomes have some relationship to why we're doing it the way we're doing it. But like Roland said, I'm finding it more interesting, the feeling like this could be here or here. Yeah, and it makes me think of, we're all in different places in the landscape. There's different ways to slice and dice it, and it's not like they're right, it's just different lenses, and they all provide some information. So we've all had a chance for a share, and then one last on this topic. Anything that you're noticing in the other people's shares? April, over to you. Or any like pin you want to put in some thoughts so that we come back to it the next time we get together.
I don't think I have anything to say except, for me, the culture of shared responsibility is really emerging. And the other thing that somehow needs to go into all of this is, how does it align with reciprocity, which we've talked about as one of our big kind of drivers. And it seems that's under culture of shared responsibility, but not only there. Maybe it's under agreements too, but seems something important about that. That's all I have to say. Over to Roland.
This is I feel like it's a very right brain activity for me. It's more sort of like getting a sense of the outline of something, that which then makes me wonder, because I just have this vague sense of an outline of something, then what do we do with this? How is this useful? Over to, and that's an honest question. It's not I by no means mean to want this to sound like it's a discrediting. I'm open and curious, and I'm not sure what to do with what we've got. So over to Justin.
I'll pass to Angela.
My brain keeps wanting to like make this into like a multiple Venn diagram, if that's even possible. Or if to like address the multiple yellow sticky notes with the green one. Maybe if there's like one sticky note that goes in multiple spots, we can make that like a different color so that we can see what ideas are coming up in multiple areas. And I do like Roland's awareness of how to use this, like what do we do with what we have kind of thing. And maybe that's like a sub question. There's like the title question, and then like a sub question would be like, okay, now what? I passed the Ben.
We have an answer for the now what. And it's actually a well thought out, and we have that written down document answer, which is we are identifying badges that are skills that people could earn that allow the Heartwork Guild to do its work. So basically, there's a correlation between the skills that are necessary for Heartwork to do its work well and what we're putting on the board here. And we don't know what that relationship, not all of these will be a badge, but some of these might go into the badge in terms of context. But ultimately, and the way our badge system works, it's always about shadowing somebody who can demonstrate how to do, for example, a good opening until you feel comfortable enough that you can give it a try where you are shadowed. And eventually, when there's an agreement by the shadower and the shadowee, then you've got your badge, et cetera, et cetera. So there is a very concrete, specific thing that we are working towards, which is a list of demonstrable skills that we need to be able to work as a guild. And Angela, I love your idea of the Venn diagram. Well, April and I are, I would Venn diagram the world if I had the time. And I agree. I think that would be really interesting to see where are the overlaps. And because I think April was talking about sequencing. And I think that if we do that Venn diagram part, I think some of the sequencing will also maybe emerge from that. There may be a flow to how the different bubbles in the Venn diagram work. So for me, that feels like a good next step is kind of converting. And that's something I can do in between the meetings is I can just turn the green ones into circles, that kind of roughly take that space. And then we can go from there. All right, so we've had our wrap up on this, and we still have some time to talk about meeting times. And I think, Roland, can I hand that back to you to talk about? Are you there?
Sure. Sorry, I'm off schedule for the baking the bread, and I had anyway. My usual, doing too many things at the same time. Right. So the problem statement is there's an opportunity here for us to figure out ways to make it easier for folks on different parts of the planet to be able to attend meetings, not just for us, but overall. We have a member of the cohort who is in European time, and the only guild that they're really interested in attending is Heartwork. So I am bringing it in using sociocracy. The changing of the meeting time means that people who are attending and want to attend are affected. And because you are the people being affected, I bring it to your attention to see what's possible. So our European counterpart is willing to watch the videos and participate in that way. And I think that this is also an opportunity for us to figure out ways to be able to make, like I was saying earlier, if we can figure out ways to make it easier for people elsewhere to join into actual talky parts of the meeting, it could be really useful for future organizing. So that's the situation and the problem. And yeah.
So gathering considerations.
Gathering considerations. Right. So what should we do? Well, let's do a round of gathering considerations, and I'll see if I can start. I think one of the things that I was trying to consider was going, and it's the you know, as I think we all know, that scheduling is really annoying and really hard, and so I was considering just doing another one of those meeting polls with this as the problem statement, because we to see if there's any if any revisions in terms of people's availability. The availability so far is there's practically no one who is available at the same time as somebody in Europe for this meeting. But then, you know, if the question that you're asked is what is your preferred time to meet, then that will change the way that you answer the question, maybe, anyway. So is it just a matter of putting out the scheduler again and just being more careful, or more sort of direct in the question, in the wording of the question? And I think I passed to Justin. I forgot for a second.
Yeah. That's not what I was thinking about now. Yeah, I'm just wondering, I know one of the points I had, if we're just making one point, is there is a magic that happens when you're present at a meeting that's potentially lost if you're solely watching the recordings.
Yep.
Pass to Angela.
I do like the idea of another poll. I feel like that's our only option at this point for scheduling mishaps, or yeah. And I don't know if it would be best if our European participant goes first, so that we have like more of a window, or yeah, more knowledge of like when works for them. Maybe I don't know if that would work out. I pass to Ben.
We know their availability. Pretty much we know 100% of their availability. And one of the challenges is with West Coast, with Pacific time and European time, it's they're 9 hours, 8 hours or 9 hours ahead of us. So they're going to sleep by 10 o'clock morning, 10 o'clock a.m. our time. So there's just only a few hours in the morning that are available, and only some days of the week. So my consideration is I don't have a problem with doing another one of the meeting polls, but it simply may be there isn't a time that works for people. And likewise, how do you make choices if it works for, you know, right now it doesn't work for one person in Europe, and then what if we switch and make it not available for one person in North America? You know, how do we balance the overall needs? So I guess my consideration is there are going to just be limits on finding times that work for everyone. And I really do, I totally recognize that there's, well, I will put up another option, which is we could do what we're doing for the navigation sessions and the agreement circles, where if we meet every 2 weeks, we could have an afternoon meeting, and then 2 weeks later a morning meeting, and then 2 weeks later an afternoon meeting. So we could, you know, distribute the availability around a little bit more. So that's an option. April, over to you.
I am of the opinion that we need to accommodate the European folks. I already work in this way. And actually, that might put some limits on how I can work here, because I'm already meeting Europeans between 8 in the morning, my time, and 12 noon, which is 4 in the afternoon, their time, to 8 p.m. But I would suggest that at least part of the time that we have a meeting in their time period that they're available, which I'm suggesting is between our time, Pacific time, is between 8 a.m. and 12 noon. Over to Roland.
I'm really cottoning to the idea of alternating morning, afternoon, especially if we're, you know, leading into being able to, and being clear about what that means to be able to view and weigh in on meeting stuff. It's a recording, you know, just as an example, it's a recording, so there may be the impression that, you know, somebody has 2 weeks to view and say something that they want to add to the meeting. And is that the case, or is it, so far we've loosely been, and I don't know, it may be written down somewhere, I don't know, but we've been saying 48 hours after a meeting. So that's the window of time to be able to, especially if we have action items, if there, and that it's more, I'm going into too much detail, but anyway, more in terms of objections or concerns. But so kind of a combination of things, I suppose. Alternation, and then having clear, easy to access guidelines for what it means to participate in a meeting remotely or phased. So over to Justin.
I'm just thinking about like a diversity of perspectives that comes with having like a global network, and just what might be lost if the scheduling is more oriented towards one place over another. And yeah, just thinking about how scheduling is hard and frustrating. And I was just fantasizing about like networking, having like, oh, if there was more Europeans, then you would have you would have a North American Heartwork and Philosophy and a European Heartwork and Philosophy, and then you'd have your representative from each of like your double linking or whatever that's coordinating those things. That's where my mind was going. I'll pass to Angela.
I resonated with what Ben said about alternating between the 2 weeks. And yeah, if there's an opportunity to get to both, you can do that if it's so in your realm. I pass to Ben.
Yeah, I think Justin's point is, it's a reminder of good enough for now. We are a global network, but we aren't a huge global network. So we're still, even getting critical mass at guilds is, kind of when everyone is agreed in the same time zone, it can still be a challenge. I feel kind of like it it seems like some options are kind of bubbling to the top. We can do a follow-up on the when to meet, more specifically just for people involved in heart work. And we can look then to find what's the best option for an AM and a PM meeting and give that a shot. So it seems like there's agreement on that. So I'm offering it up as a proposal, and once around any concerns or objections or friendly amendments. April, over to you.
No concerns, no objections, no friendly amendments, and I have to go in about 3 minutes. Thank you. Over to Roland.
Um, Agreed. And there may come a time when enough numbers show up that we will then, and this is part of the, loosely put, the oral tradition. Everything is an iteration. So when conditions change, how to be able to move with them. And I already said agreed. I was also wondering about actually having a calendar of times. Like, could we figure out a calendar of international meeting times that we can refer to?
Mhm.
There's this band of time where this part of the world is available. There's this band of time when this part of the world is available. And that we refer to that, and that when there is an international situation, that we can say, okay, well, here's our calendar. What fits in here? That could be useful for future instances. Over to Justin.
Yeah, I guess my last thoughts were just like trying to talk with Angela and see if we could just wake up earlier, and I could suffer through that because I'm not really a morning person, but I'm not really an evening person, and sometimes I think I'm just not really like an existing person. The whole of being conscious is difficult, but afternoons are probably the best time, which our kind of schedule is that. But yeah, I agree, and I don't think there's any amendments other than just wondering if it was changed to a morning time, how would we do? Passed it to Angela.
Yeah, I think figuring out the latest we could do a morning meeting, I think would be beneficial for solely our family. And I understand if that doesn't resonate or work with the rest of the guild. So we could try to be morning people. I passed to Ben.
I can attest to, you can actually shift your I used to be totally a night owl, and then I met Roland, and he is the opposite of a night owl. And so we've had to make adjustments, and it kind of works. And but Justin, you make me giggle because I feel the same. I'm like, I'm not really up for morning meetings, and by the late afternoon I start to fade, and there's like this, there's a limited window. And anyhow, I think it sounds like we've got a proposal, and I'm assuming, Roland, would you be willing to do the when to meet? And we'll go from there. So that's great. Thanks everyone for helping work through this. And I believe that brings us to the end of our agenda. So basically, we're a little bit over time. So really quick last thoughts for the good of the cause, and goodbye. April, over to you.
Thank you. This has been fun, and we're dealing with Heartwork stuff that's at the heart of the work for me, I think, and for the guild. So I'm really happy about that. Thank you. Goodbye, and on to Roland.
Diversity rocks. Over to Justin.
Thank you all. Tinge.
Thank you again for having us and allowing us to show up late and let us fly by the seat of our pants. And over to Ben.
We're all flying by the seat of our pants. That's this is, that whole thing about how at some point you're going to grow up and be an adult and suddenly it's all going to become clear. I'm led to believe that's been a lie. So this is great. Thanks, everyone. And if you are up for another meeting, we'll be doing our agreement circle at 4:30 Pacific. So same bat channel. And hopefully we'll see some of you back here later. Oh, bye, y'all.